Hi everyone, it's Alexis with Recruiting Daily. Stay tuned with us for just another minute or two and we are going to get ready to go live. Just hold on a few seconds so we can let the rest of the audience roll in and we'll get started. Alrighty, I think we've given everybody enough time to roll in, but I know more are still on the way. But anyways, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming back this afternoon to attend another Recruiting Daily webinar. Today we have an awesome topic we're going to cover about scheduling. It's not scary. We're going to show you how it can be awesome and fun. Avoid all those, scheduling woes that you people have to suffer through daily. We're going to help you and fix it, so don't worry. Housekeeping per usual. If you've never joined one of our webinars, there's a couple rules. Well, the first one is you can't talk, but it doesn't matter because we can't hear you. You are in listen only mode. However, please use your control panel to ask questions and raise your hand if there's anything that you need. We want you to participate. So on your control panel, you'll see there's a little area you can put questions in that we can get to throughout the webinar, as well as take questions on Twitter. So if you are online, Clara, they're on with us. They're going to be using the hashtag #SaveScheduling as well as us. So please make sure to follow them online and put questions there if you don't want to put them here. Also, we'll have the recording in 24 hours. So if for any reason you can't hang with us for this full hour, we're going to have it out to you in an email with some other cool stuff from Clara. So recap, you can't hear us, we can hear you. Ask questions on the control panel as well as online following the hashtag #SaveScheduling. Now, I am going to tell you real quick what we're going to do. We sent out a survey a couple weeks ago to ask about what you hated the most about scheduling. We're going to go over that. We're going to go over the top 5 most common scheduling challenges that we found as a result of the survey results. So we're going to give you some problems, some solutions, and show you why it doesn't have to be so scary in the world of scheduling, followed by some questions at the end, and we'll take a couple throughout as well, again, using that control panel and Twitter, #SaveScheduling. Without further ado, I'm going to throw it to today's experts, Maran Nelson and William Tincup, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and we're going to jump right into some great topics today. Guys?
Hello?
Hello!
Hey, Maran.
We're here. I'm Maran.
Go ahead.
William, we could try to swap voices for this. That could be an interesting.
I dare you. You introduce me, and then I'm going to introduce you. No, I'm just kidding. You please introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, I will. I am Maran. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Clara Labs. We're super excited to have gotten involved in this webinar, because we focus a lot on scheduling and we work with a bunch of recruiting teams in particular. It's been a handful of years. We focused on R&D for a long time, building our technology, and we're now very much out in the world and talking to people about their scheduling woes.
So I fell in love with Maran's company. This is William Tincup, president of Recruiting Daily, I guess, chief bottle washer. I fell in love with Maran's company because she's from Texas, and we could talk about all the idiosyncratic stuff that happens in Texas. She went to UT, which is a wonderful school, and she's tackling a problem that I've wanted tackled for 100 years. So I hope y'all get to learn a lot about Clara. And we're going to really kind of dig into scheduling clearly and kind of all of that stuff. But I wanted to kind of give you some context of why Maran and Clara is here. And without any further ado, Lex, let's go ahead and get started. So, like Lex said, we surveyed the audience. One of the things that, we went out to recruiters, obviously the Recruiting Daily house list. We went out to recruiters and hiring managers, sourcers, and some HR managers as well, talent acquisition consultants. And really, we just wanted to kind of, instead of kind of assuming that there was a problem, we wanted to make sure there was a problem and what is the problem and how much time people were using. And what they were doing and how they were doing it, etc. So we'll dig into that. But on this first slide, what I see is I see two things. One is the waste of time that scheduling presents all of us. That it's time that you can't get back in a week. So regardless of like whatever hours you work in a week, 60, 70, 80, 50, 40, whatever, whatever you're using in scheduling, it's lost. It's sunk. Accountants would call it sunk costs. It's just gone. You consumed it, and you can't get those hours back. You can't get that time back. So I look at the waste, the inefficiency on one side, the waste, and then I look at it in forms of candidate experience. Whenever we interact with candidates, be it sourcers, hiring managers, recruiters, etc., when we interact with them, how we interact with them, both in style and substance, that's judged. It should be judged, and it is judged. And we probably should think about that and think about it more of like, what are they receiving when we go and say, okay, we want you to interview with 6 people, and it's going to take all of Tuesday morning, and it's going to be this. Like, that's all they get, and that's not a great experience, or is that a great experience? Considering your brand, it's something to think about. So on one side of a coin, I see waste and inefficiency. On the other side, I think there's more elegant way to think about the candidate and his or her experience as they go through this journey with you and your company. Maran, what do you see in this?
Yeah, I really appreciate the focus on candidate experience. I think we have this knee jerk. People tend to have this sense of, man, I think I'm spending a lot of time scheduling. I mean, certainly I'm constantly doing it. I don't even know how much time it is though, really, right? There's this difficulty in just reasoning about how much time you may be spending on this specific task. I think that in addition though to the time sink, which is substantial, there is the importance of the candidate experience. And at Clara, in particular, and I would encourage everybody to think primarily about how you provide a really good candidate experience, how you provide a process that relieves everybody involved of anxiety, not just you as the recruiter, but your hiring manager, your candidate, and being thoughtful with the time. So it's not just the hours spent, it's the quality of the way that you are communicating with everybody through the process.
Yeah, and I want to point out, someone asked, this is how much time people spend in a week scheduling. So there's a significant amount, 1 to 5 hours.
although the irony is, I actually talked to some recruiting coordinators last week who spend about 7 hours a day doing scheduling. And so I was about to say, depending on the position, we might be able to slice that number in a little bit different ways.
Yeah, and that's why you end up with recruiting coordinators so frequently, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of different roles, it becomes such a big deal to provide that candidate experience that's really high quality and such that you end up with somebody who's really focusing as an expert on just the scheduling transaction. So for those folks, certainly it ends up being quite a bit of time.
You said something, Maran, that it really kind of triggered something for me. We think of it as little bitty things, like, okay, that's just one email. Well, that's just one email to one candidate that's now going to represent about 45 minutes over the course of 3 or 4 days. And then, well, if you're working on 15 recs, okay, kind of multiply that out. So it kind of seems small if you just think about it in the as it relates to just that one email that you're going to send out or the one text message you're going to send out to that candidate. But it represents a much larger waste, a percentage of your time than just the 1 or 2 or 5 emails. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. So when we look at this, when we got back the results, of course, my mind goes to, you know, anxiety is not just it's not just the candidates. Like when we think of anxiety, we think of, okay, the candidates have the burden, or the majority of the burden of anxiety. I actually think we all have that anxiety. I think hiring managers, I think recruiters, sourcers, management, everyone, candidates. I think everyone, if you look at anxiety, I think you can cut it easily fivefold, and everyone's got, and it's different. It's not the exact same anxiety. If we tell a candidate, well, you're gonna interview with 10 different people, and it's going to escalate from, from the roles all the way up, that's a different anxiety than, hey, we're going to do a video interview or a phone interview, and you can be at your house, and you can kind of walk around your apartment or whatever, and you can answer the questions without anybody kind of looking at your face, or your the way that you're walking around the apartment. So different anxiety, different levels of anxiety, and different types of anxiety, but I think that we're all kind of wrought with anxiety,
Yeah.
and it's almost like anxiety management. Maybe we should do something different in scheduling. Mara, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I've not actually used this example before, so maybe it won't work. But when you think about what scheduling really means, it's about trying to coordinate a ton of tiny details, right? Who is the candidate? Who's the hiring manager? What is the Zoom conference link or whatever you might be using? Have you followed up with this person? How many times should you follow up? Are you being pushy? Do they have the kind of information they need about the parking or et cetera? And it really does end up being, like you said, a long task list. And the analogy that's coming to mind is when I think about traveling to a new place, and all of a sudden there's all this new context. I have to go on a different kind of transportation system and try to understand how to get from point A to point B at what time, and is it gonna all work out, with whom, who else needs to be there, where am I going, how do I get in touch with them? That's really what the scheduling problem is. Scheduling is different in every case, with every candidate, with every hiring manager, with every company that you may be working with or for. There's a new process, and each time you don't know if you're just going to hop right on the subway and get to your destination, it's going to be great, or if you're going to get lost and there's going to be a layover and you're going to have to go back and forth many, many times. And I think that's the anxiety is connected to that uncertainty and to the kind of constant newness of the task itself. So the root of it is in that, I think.
Right. Well, what's great there is it's the constant change. It's never a problem that gets solved exactly the same way,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So it's like a fingerprint. You have your scheduling fingerprint that's going to be a little bit different each time you do it, and so we can't master it. What immediately came to mind when you said about the little things, it's like when candidates get all the details, and let's say you give them parking information as a great example. If for whatever reason they lost that information or can't find it, they don't want to ping you back, because
Mhm.
then they look like, there's a perception that they don't look like, that they're detail oriented, or they just kind of look like they don't know what they're doing, etc. So they won't ping you back just because they don't want the perception to be there. Whereas, like, well, then they're going to have anxiety about how long it's going to take to park and how many blocks away do they have to, like, it's madness, and it's all could be solved in a much more refined way. Um, let's go ahead and go on to the top 5. Okay, so before we get into these, we're going to go through the top 5, and we're going to take a look at what we think the problem is, what we think solutions could be. But before we do, I want to make sure that we reiterate what Lex said about throwing questions in the chat window. Please do that. Marin and I both love questions, and we both love getting interrupted because it's y'all's webinar, so we want you to get out of it what you can. And secondly, if you want, you can also hit the Twitter hashtag save scheduling, or hashtag save scheduling, and you can hit that at any time, and we'll try and answer those questions as well. So the back and forth, simple enough, right? Well, not so simple. You've got all the complexities that Marin talked about in the last slide, and you've got unresponsive people on all sides. Candidates that look like they were going to be responsive, and then all of a sudden they're not. recruiters that said, oh, this is the most important thing, and then all of a sudden you can't get them on, email for 2 weeks. You've got last minute schedule changes, which is true for all of us. It's true for candidates, hiring managers. There's always a snafu. Kids are sick, something happened, or again, that example of 6 people, 5 of them can make it and the 6 can't. So how do we get that person rescheduled? And what do we do in that day to fill the gap, et cetera? Like there's all these nuances that would have to be managed. We're all under significant time crunches, and again, that's fivefold. We're all dealing with kind of the same scrutiny of our time, making sure that we're getting the most out of our time. And I think Maran referred to it as attention to detail. I really like the way the phraseology of it, and it's also the velocity is constant. So it's the little things of parking or bring your resume or dress like this, whatever the bit is. There's all these things that anyone can get wrong, any candidate. It's not an intelligence thing. It's probably more than anything else, it's attention to detail. And we might not have communicated the details, or we might have left something out, or this, that, and the other, and back and forth. Again, it's a waste of time. It's inefficient, and it's also not creating the best experience, or putting a positive foot forward in the candidate experience as well. So the problem, as I just kind of went through, it's multi-layered, and different people have different parts of that problem, and that they that they recycle in each time that they schedule folks. In terms of solutions, Maran, what do you think are potential solutions?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that we've learned from talking to a bunch of different recruiters is that the best thing to do is really articulate your best practices for this process to yourself on the front end, right? Think about every step in the candidate journey that might trip them up, right? Things that you could share with them that might make them feel connected and plugged in, that you won't just intuitively remember every time. So it's really thinking about taking a full service approach, thinking through the entire candidate journey, and doing everything that you can to keep those candidates and your interviewers, right, from having to Google the person's LinkedIn right before they show up, right? They should have that link. Already. So making sure that you're just really being thoughtful about each of those steps. That can also mean things like FAQs, email templates that you're always using that are in your applicant tracking system that limit the back and forth with the candidate so that you don't have to constantly re-ping them. Oh, actually, I also need your phone number, right? You really want to be tight with your communication. And I think generally making sure that you're thinking about the tools that will help you be reliable and consistent with the process that you're running, right? That you're always employing clear professional language, that you're always being proactive, and that you've designed a process such that you're going to take care of everybody in a way that doesn't take you a ton of time every time, but that is going to take good care of them.
Yeah, Maran, there's a couple things in there that I really liked and want to unpack. One is you use the word thoughtful a number of times, and you use the word designed a couple of times. And it's just that the idea that you would actually think this through, this procession, this action, something that's very tactical, and just making sure that you get it right. I really appreciate that. Let's take a look at number 4, Lex. All right, so those of you that are in relationships, I'll just go ahead and say one of the more brilliant things that I did years ago is that, if I don't say so myself, is that I gave my wife access to my calendar. So we were going through we were going through number 5, and it whipped me to death, quite frankly. Where it's like can you go to the doctor on Tuesday, not Wednesday, this, that, and the other, back and forth, and time zones, and this, my travel schedule, and it really just like sent me into a very dark place. So at one point I had an epiphany. I'm like, you know what? Here's my calendar. You need me to be somewhere? You just go to the calendar. and just put it on the calendar. I'm good. Like whatever you put on my calendar, I'll do whatever you tell me to. You know, I've been married for 25 years, so you know I can do that and get away with it. So it's like it's easy to just say, here's my calendar, do it. That's cool. But the irony of ironies is that's my personal calendar at tincup.com, my Gmail calendar. It does not sync with my Recruiting Daily calendar. So I'll take you into the bowels of Recruiting Daily if you don't mind. My own Gmail account doesn't sync with the Recruiting Daily. So I have to manage two separate calendars that literally say the same thing because I've copied both sides, but very inefficient. I would tell you I probably spend too much time a day or a week just managing that. But it's less than the time that I would have spent going back and forth with my wife. So as we look at number 4 and too many calendars, I love the quotes that are presented there. That's me, and I wanted y'all to kind of understand how, you know, I'm not doing things as efficiently as I should, and I'm working on it. But we're all running multiple calendars if we think about it. And I think that you know, I'm not alone. And I think that as you're managing those multiple calendars, there's always something lost. There's always a detail lost, or it's done on the wrong day, or you didn't copy it to another calendar, etc. So there's always, if not something that wasn't done, it's the thought or an anxiety that something wasn't done in terms of calendaring. So Maran, go ahead and fix me. Give us the solution.
I liked the thoughtfulness of connecting that idea of a way to eliminate back and forth is by having access to people's calendars. We work with a bunch of staffing agencies where, you know, there's a question of calendar access. Do you even want responsibility for people's calendar? It's going to be its own kind of a burden, but at least you won't have to ping them all the time. And so realistically, you want to have access to calendars because it gives you more information and you have to ping people less to have those calendars than to just have to constantly ask them when they're free, when they're available. But then you have the too many calendars problem, right? You're needing to make sure that you're overlapping all of these calendars. Different people are good or bad about actually being responsible to their calendars, to making sure that they're up to date. The good news is that there are tools, we happen to be one of them, where you can connect as many calendars to Clara as you'd like. You don't need everybody to adhere to the same kind of rules or conventions with their calendars. We can reason about lots of different ways that people use their calendars to mark, you know, out of office events or et cetera, and make sure that you're not missing some of those by accident, booking people when they're not actually free. And Clara, of course, also sends calendar invitations on your behalf, so you're not needing to worry about not getting things out the door and not getting them to the right emails, to the right calendars, all that jazz.
Genius. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. And thanks for fixing me. Now I know what I have to do.
Well, it's harder when there are 6 of you, I will say. That brings us to our next point.
Alrighty. So we've all had this where we have to schedule multiple people, and when you with the problem is kind of multifold, right? So it's the scheduling and potential sequencings, the if this happens, if this person's available, then they see this person, etc. So, you know, the problem with multiple parties and multiple schedules is, you know, availability, you know, figuring out when people can do it, and in that moment of then blocking it off, and then the sequencing of, you know, thinking about what's next for the candidate, or transversely, what's next for, you know, sourcing, hiring, recruiting, etc. Like what's next. So you got to figure out the time slots and the availability, book it, and then make sure that you kind of think about the what goes next, which is not easy. And I think that's what we, you know, when we think about the candidate experience, we make a simple change and, okay, we can't do it in the morning, but oh, okay, so-and-so's available at 2. Well, you know, that's a kind of an easy thing, right? They're there at 11 and okay, we were going to have something at 12, but it got pushed back. That's life. Like that just happens. Well, what if that person had to go pick up their kid? at that time. Well, now it's not a simple thing. And now you've got them in a situation where do they try to get their child covered with somebody else? Or do they reschedule? Or do they tell like kind of what's going on? Like it's little things, little simple things, sequencing things that we don't really think a whole lot back can really affect the candidate experience. And there's probably ways to fix that. Maran, what are some of the potential solutions?
Potential solutions. Well, I think one thing that we hear really often is that when you end up with multiple parties, you're likely to run into conflicts. Somebody is probably going to have a conflict. You're not going to have the conference room available that you would really prefer, so maybe you need to try to find another one. Somebody in your series and your panel for your on-site isn't going to be available, but maybe they have a one-on-one. Maybe you can ask them to move that, maybe not. Who is it? You know, what are the rules there? So the thing that Clara is really good about doing, and the thing that I recommend doing, is letting software do as much of the tedium of finding availability as possible, so that you can just deal with the conflict mitigation and not have to deal with the entire process of every single person's availability, conference room availability, you know, candidate availability. So the way that I would reason about this is being able to say, cool, let's perform a search across all of these calendars, and I want to see what the best available options are. Maybe it'll be the case that Clara or you will be able to retrieve a perfect option, everything's fine, everything's available, and you can just plug it and go. But like we were talking about earlier with the uncertainty, it may also be the case that you need to do some conflict resolution. And we can help you identify, oh, this will all work perfectly if this person can move their one-on-one. Or, oh, this will all work perfectly if you can accept this conference room. Or if the candidate is actually free at that time, they said they slightly preferred less, right? So this puts the driver's seat of the conflict resolution in the hands of the recruiter, and Clara or other scheduling solutions, right, will be able to do a lot of the nitty-gritty of coordinating all of those details, and you can just sit in the decision-making seat.
So really, before we get on to the next one, availability and the way that that's done, if you don't mind spending a couple of moments there, is that AI or machine learning? Like, how is that done?
Exactly.
If you don't mind getting technical for a second.
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. Sometimes it will actually be really simple, right? You'll say, okay, cool, we want the candidate to come in sometime next week. We've been able to parse that we should be thinking about times that are available next week, right? For these people, we can, you know, quickly through software size up all of those calendars and think about when those people might be free, what time slots make sense, and then see, to your point, if there are any conflicts that we need to surface to you, or if we can just go ahead and make a decision and make a booking because it's all lining up perfectly. So that's for us a combination of that software system and then being able to surface that to you as the recruiter, so that you can either say yes, one click as opposed to 50 clicks, right, to search for all of the kind of availability that you might have, or, you know, oh, perfect, between these two options, let's go with the former.
Does it, and it's just curiosity for me, I'm sure some folks that are listening have the same curiosity, does it get smarter over time?
Yes, that's one of my favorite parts.
I swear to God, we did not practice this. I'm just really curious as to how things work. So go ahead, sorry.
One of the fun things about working with machine learning is that machines and humans learn similarly. So the more that you do something, the more you learn about how to do it in the future, how to do it really well. And the cool thing about Clara is that we have now, you know, hundreds of thousands of times scheduled meetings. And so we have a system that has learned how to incorporate best practices, how to be thoughtful about the candidate experience, and how to find availability that works for everybody, even in really complicated situations. So this is something that we, of course, aspire to continue to get better and better at. But a lot of it is about, we've made huge progress being able to make it really, really easy for you to just use the things that we've learned, the things that we can surface to you about availability and conflict resolution and all that jazz. And hopefully in the future we can learn, how to help with even more parts of the candidate experience and the candidate journey. But right now we've learned how to be quite good at scheduling.
Very good. Very cool. Thank you. And thank you for getting geeky. I appreciate that. So let's take a look at number 2. And again, if you have any questions for Maran or myself, make sure you hit the chat window and also hit the Twitter hashtag #SaveScheduling. And from this one, if you've been recruiting for any length of time and you haven't had difficulty with a hiring manager, then first of all, buy a lottery ticket. Because you're extremely lucky and you probably are going to win the lottery and be very rich. So there's that. I did want to kind of read a story and kind of go through a story that a respondent to the survey kind of gave us, and I think it's indicative of things that we've all been through. So it's all the company interviews have accepted invitations. Candidates flying in from, let's say, Detroit to meet everyone. 30 minutes before the candidate arrives on site, one or more of the interviews bows out to a, I'm using air quotes, business emergency that has to be handled, leaving that process that was well thought of with a gap, let's say a 30 or 60-minute gap, right? So then what do? How do you make the game time decision? How do you move somebody there? But what often happens is it gets rationalized that that person needs a break. They've been we were going to have another person interview them at that point. That person is doing some type of Excel emergency. And so now what we're going to do is have a gap, and we rationalize, okay, well, they just sit in the conference room. They'll have, coffee, and or somebody's going to walk them around on a tour, an impromptu tour of the office. That's not very well thought of. And one of the things that all that does is it creates anxiety for the candidate because they have no idea what happened. And even if you tell them, that doesn't matter because they had prepared for kind of a process. And now they're left thinking probably the worst case scenario. I wasted my time. I shouldn't be here. They don't like me. All the negative stuff just floods in, and it's natural. It happened to me. It would happen to anybody. And so that one little thing that if you allow hiring managers to kind of ruin the candidate experience, you've just got to make sure that they understand how important it is. Every one of these, if you accept a meeting, you got to keep it. Period. End of story. So, Maran, with all that backdrop, what do you see as potential solutions to this?
Yeah, and I think that this is one of the most important things that we've learned about what it takes to be a really great recruiter is making sure, similarly to what we were talking about on the front end of the candidate experience, right? Thinking through the whole thing, thinking through best practices. I think to the hiring manager interface, you want to think about how to establish a good partnership with them and how to really help save their time wherever you possibly can, but also have that commitment reciprocated that you have a good process, you have a good relationship, and when something is on their calendars because you've been thoughtful about their time, because you've given them the opportunity to tell you about their preferences and their availability, that they're going to honor the commitment to show up and to really be there for your candidate. So I think there are a couple of parts of what I think the solution to the problem is. One of them is just communication, right? Communicating with the hiring manager, letting them know how they can contribute, handling those relationships with your hiring managers by being really explicit, proactive, sharing the, LinkedIn for the candidate, any number of things that may be particular to your process, your company. But it's really about equal partnership and constant communication, setting expectations about how they want you to deal with conflicts on their calendars, whether or not you can book over existing meetings, in what cases, all that jazz. That's the first part, is really just designing the best practice with every respective hiring manager so that you can do a good job working alongside them. And then the second thing is, after you have that best practice, really trying to automate as much of the persistency or execution against that as you can, right? How do you send confirmation emails? How do you send reminders? Making sure you're being really speedy when you do need to reschedule or work harder to accommodate somebody. And this entire process is something we've thought a lot about, right? We work with hundreds of different companies, all of whom have different preferences, different priorities, and has to think about availability all the time. So Clara's quite good at being proactive, sending confirmations, sending reminders, follow-ups, thinking about how to reschedule, thinking about your conference room preferences, all that jazz, and making sure that when something comes up, we're the first line of interaction, right? We're already thinking about whatever conflict may have dropped into your lap, into your inbox, and we'll help you manage it.
Very good. All right, number one, as the countdown continues.
As the countdown continues, and I do want to ask before we get into number one, Jeffrey Schreider asked if you could please, Maran, explain why someone would choose Clara over Calendly and what makes it better.
Great question. So I'll firstly say they're pretty different solutions. So Calendly is a link-based solution for folks who don't know. So it's a kind of, drop here, click this link, follow this thing, and it'll take care of you. Going back to the travel example earlier, you get to decide when you're interacting with a new person how to best take care of them and how to weave them through all the logistics that they're about to go through and the whole process that they're about to go through. And you can either decide to design for a process that is going to be much simpler from a link perspective, but also much less hand-holding, right? Much less able to do conflict resolution, able to take care of follow-ups, able to make sure that you're maintaining good relationships with the preferences of your hiring managers and all that jazz. We've tended to find that while for individuals, Calendly can be a really good, straightforward solution, for recruiting teams, just the complexity of scheduling, again, I don't want to tell you what workflow looks like, but for the hundreds of folks that we've gotten to interact with, the workflow is really important. It's important to take care of the candidate experience. It's important to be really thoughtful about how you use your touch points with them, about how you're ushering them through that journey. And it's really complex. A lot of people are involved. A lot of stuff comes up. And so you want somebody who's been very thoughtful about your case, your use case, the recruiting use case, and all of the conflicts that could arise and all the best practices that you really want to employ in that journey. So we've focused a lot on managing the complexity of all the people, all the calendars, and the importance of being really generous with the candidate experience. And there are those simpler, more plug-and-chug solutions that I think work well for different people's workflows as well. And Calendly is a good solution in those cases.
Sweet. All right, let's talk number one. Go ahead, guys.
So, when I look at number one, it's the access part that kind of I obviously kind of think of, because not everyone uses a digital calendar. Like, there's still a lot of people that use paper calendars. I know it sounds crazy, and you might automatically think that it's an age thing, but I have a niece who, oddly enough, went to UT that has a paper calendar and writes in her calendar, and so it happens. It's an access thing. It's okay. Well, how do we do that? But also, it's the guessing that sometimes happens. We're on the phone and we don't have access to John's calendar. Well, we think he's going to be in Seattle on Monday. Let's book it for Tuesday. And we learned later on that day, oh no, he's in Seattle on Tuesday. Let me get back to the candidate, etc. And so there's this brokenness of when we have access, do we have access, and or do people have things on their calendar? Is their calendar trued up with vacation and PTO and things like that? So I kind of look at number one as it's almost a culmination of five through two of, okay, now that you get down to this, do you have access? Can you create a great experience for your candidate, for everyone actually, not just the candidate, but for all involved? Are you thoughtful, and are you guessing, which we haven't talked a whole lot about up until now, but there is a ton of guessing that happens in calendaring, and it comes from a good place, but it's not smart calendaring, which is really kind of the whole bit today. Is we want to kind of move people's minds to how do we go from something that's very tactical, takes a lot of time, very inefficient, wastes a lot of your time, to something that's smarter, a way of doing this that's a little bit more intelligent, it's a little bit more innovative, it's more thoughtful, and it's just smarter. So Maran, do you see the problem any different, and or what do you think are some of the solutions?
Yeah, I think, and I keep coming back to this, but just the idea of acknowledging how complex all of this is, how many failure cases there can be, how many times you can end up accidentally with 20 back and forths and really adding anxiety to your hiring manager, hurting your relationship there, adding anxiety to your candidate, needing to reschedule on them when they're, they already have an offer from someone else. Like there's just a lot of context there. And I think that making sure that you are thinking about how to find solutions to the complexity of all of those human relationships that you need to manage and all those calendars and logistics that you need to manage by, being proactive, setting all of those fail cases up ahead of time, automating your follow-ups so that you can close the loop with your candidate, provide availability, getting all of your interviews comprehensive availability so you don't have to just constantly ping them to make one-off requests, keeping everybody updated on the challenges that you're running into, and really just setting expectations for everyone. So, I hate to end on a deluge, but scheduling is a multi-turn game. There are many steps in the process. Maybe first the candidate will talk with you, maybe then with a hiring manager, maybe then with an executive, maybe they'll go to dinner. Like there's so many things that happen over the course of the candidate's journey. And being thoughtful on the front end about designing for all of those conflicts and having a good, reliable solution so that you can take care of everybody is the way to make scheduling simple.
So there's some things that Maran haven't really said, but I really would like to get her take on. We're in a high talent market. Scarcity as it relates to talent is just it's our life. It's what we have to deal with as sourcers and hiring managers and recruiters every day. We're under the gun to get the right candidate, and there's just not as many of those right candidates out there as there was 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So two things that kind of come to mind is you said the word momentum at one point, and it really got me to think about how do you use momentum as a competitive advantage. So as we look at smart scheduling, the ability to do things fast, to just do it faster than your peers or faster than your competitors, especially like you're out there in the middle of Silicon Valley in San Francisco, you're in one of the hotter places for talent. How do you talk about speed, accuracy clearly, but speed as it relates to how people can do this faster, which makes them potentially get the candidates faster?
Yeah, and it's actually a cool point. We've heard lots of anecdotes and need to do a formal case study, but using a good solution helps you just close your time to. It helps you shorten your time to close a candidate. Having all of this stuff worked out on the front end means you can be fast, you can use that momentum to your advantage, and really get people placed happily sooner. So it's something that we think a lot about as a strategic advantage, since it is a software solution, right? There are things that software solutions are really powerful at, and one of those is speed and consistency, right? Once you tell a software system what the best practice is, it's going to be executed as such. And implemented that way, and everyone will be taken care of as you kind of design for on the front end. And I think the relief of that, of being able to be the strategic thinker who's designing the kind of process that you want people to go through, and then just being able to have the oversight and the conflict resolution of that system, but not having to do the tedium, the multi-hour a week, in the nitty-gritty logistics of that, is the future of a lot of our jobs. And I certainly think the future of recruiting, where there is still so much of that tedium. So we're excited about it.
Very good. And again, folks, as you're listening, please ask questions either via chat or through the hashtag save scheduling. So something else that came to my mind is actually the perception game. So imagine Maran asking a candidate that wanted to work for you. You're at some type of networking event or whatever, and you're out and about, and someone says, "Yeah, I really would love what you guys are doing, and I'd love to work with you." And you said, "Yeah, that sounds great. Fax me your resume."
Yeah.
Like, what perception would they have of your company?
Totally. No, I think that's a great point, and it's something that I enjoy a lot. Is you're trying to learn whatever you can as a candidate about what the company you're joining values and what place it will be to work, what it will be like to work there. And I think that it's just awesome to be able to interact with people who clearly have their stuff together, have a process, have a solution, are living in strategy land and not in tedium land. That says a lot about what your own experience will be like at that company, and the way that they'll value and respect your time and give you the opportunity to use great solutions. And for all of those reasons, I really think that being proactive and having a solution on the front end and being willing to pay for it truly is a great signal to the people who are considering joining your company as opposed to another, hopefully also very savvy, forward-looking, futuristic thinking organization of people who are going to respect you and your time. So that's
Yeah.
it.
It's great. I mean, that gets to the values of the company, right? So there's so much of what we say is the brand and what we say is the values. And it's one thing to say that you're an innovative company, but if you're an innovative company and you're using kind of an old-fashioned way of doing something like this, then you're not really innovative, or at least you're not innovative there, which would give me as a candidate pause. If you say one thing and all of a sudden I can find very easily that you're not what you say you are. So I think we're going to go on to Q&A, but I do have one question I want to ask you, Maran, as we've talked about all of this. Let's say that scheduling or smart scheduling is iterative. Where do you see it going next? Where do you see kind of the next thing for smart scheduling?
Good question. The thing that's interesting about scheduling is that it's really about project managing a meeting. There are like tons and tons of little things that go into helping people get connected easily in a way that they're both ready for, they're set up, they know how, the next questions, for example, might be, do you have an agenda for this meeting? Are you prepared for this meeting? Do you have a follow-up task from this meeting? Is there a next step of something that you told someone you'd do? And are you going to do that? On what time frame? So the meeting itself and getting there and following up afterwards and all the logistics around that are really, I think, almost more about managing relationships really well and being excellent as a relationship manager, as somebody who is being a good interface to your candidate, to your hiring manager, and being consistent, constant, communicative. I think it's more so about that than anything else. So when we think about the kinds of work that Clara might come to do in the future, it is in the same vein of there are all these people, you're managing all these people. How do you design a good process so that you can be really productive and proactive and be the kind of person that someone really wants to be working with and have on their team as you are juggling all of these different things in the air. So that's the bread and butter of what we love. And it's really about putting the people where people want to be, building software to help augment people so that people are doing the kinds of work that they really want to show up for, and not stuff that's arbitrary or tedious.
Awesome. And a question came in from Shriek. If I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. Shrikant. Says, I work for most of the MSP accounts. Scheduling is a real issue between candidates and hiring managers and recruiters, but do you have any advice specifically for those working in the MSP world of suppliers?
The thing that we've learned is that recruiting is interesting in that industry by industry, the workflows actually end up looking relatively similar. We help recruit folks across industries at this point. So as far as, the way that you might design or set up your process or think about proactivity for yourself, we probably already have other folks who think about it similarly. But if you want to talk in more detail, obviously we would be thrilled to. So if you have super specific questions, you can email me or our team. I'm Maran at claralabs.com, and we also have our whole team who would be happy to connect further.
I'm getting a couple specific questions as to how it works. So this one specifically, can you sync it with your ATS?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Can you sync Clara with your ATS?
Yes, we're very happy to have integrations at Lever and Greenhouse as of right now. We'll be expanding that soon, but Clara integrates with conference room booking, with applicant tracking systems, and can be really thoughtful about your whole process and make sure you still have all that data in your ATS.
Sweet. Awesome. I actually had a couple people ask that question, so that hit a few of them. There's a couple more trickling in. I do want to be thoughtful of time, so let me just grab one more and we'll see what we can do. Are there any can you tell us specifically how it works? As in, so someone said, with Calendly, they get the link, they can schedule the time. How would you make it work?
Yes. So you actually set up an email alias the same way that, we have one here, right? So this is maran.nelson@claralabs.com. But in our case, with our Clara, it's actually clara@claralabs.com, right? For you, if you worked at Google, right, it would be clara@google.com or whatever name works for you. And we actually work entirely through email, and we just sync back to your applicant tracking system and everything like that. Or you can treat Clara through your applicant tracking system in particular. So some people are CCing Clara in their email on CC, hey, add in Clara to help us find time, and Clara's initiating the conversation and doing all that back and forth through there. We can also, as mentioned, through that applicant tracking system integration, work directly through your ATS in a similar way. But we're always a natural language interface, and we'll take care of all of the little details with Zoom links, GoToMeeting, Hangout links, phone numbers, follow-ups, etc., per your preferences as we do that work.
Hey, awesome, thank you. That was awesome. All right, well, we're gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna give everybody looks like 5 minutes back in their schedule for the day. I have a couple more questions that came in, but I'm gonna go ahead and get those direct to the lovely ladies over at Clara later on today, so they can reach out. And as I said at the very beginning, stay tuned. We will have the full recording and presentation available to you probably within the next 24 hours. So just keep an eye out in your email. But yeah, thanks everybody for attending. Thank you, Maran and everyone at Clara Labs. Thank you, William. Is there anything else we could leave on a high note? Or anything else you'd like to say, Maran, today?
I think the biggest thing is just, I've said it over and over, which is designing a process that's gonna give you your time back and let you be strategic in your work and be the kind of person that people want to work with. And that's really the future we're aiming for. So any questions or input or feedback about how we're thinking about that, or where you guys think we should go next, we're always welcome to. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Great. I'm getting a lot of people saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So awesome. I'm glad. So thanks. Great webinar from everyone. Have a great day. Well, thank you, people of the world, for joining us, and we will see you on the next one. Everyone, have a great afternoon.
Thanks,
Maran. Thanks, Lex.
Bye.
Bye-bye.